He's got a great shirt there. All right, everybody. That, if you are new to the show, that is Morphine. I would recommend buying everything Morphine recorded, and there were other bands that sort of were offshoots of Morphine, and they're all great things. Vapors of Morphine, lots of great stuff. The Morphine Project, which included a female lead singer from Face to Face, a Boston band, not the other Face to Face. So let's look at the Fauci fallout, everybody, and get into it. The Fauci fallout this time, we're talking felonies. Well, perhaps. Here it is, everybody. Yes, we've got it. Senator Rand Paul laid out why his committee voted to hold Dr. Fauci in contempt of Congress, writes Mario Naffel. Fauci sat under subpoena with a full and unconditional pardon from Biden, covering conduct going all the way back to 2014. So that is the breaking story, everybody. Rand Paul and others have recommended Dr. Fauci be cited for contempt of Congress and possible felony charges. Here we go.
She sat before this committee in the witness chair under subpoena for conduct covered by the President Biden's full and unconditional pardon reaching back to 2014. Dr. Fauci faced no risk of federal prosecution. All he had to do was tell the truth. More than 100 times, though, he refused. The chair ruled that Dr. Fauci's assertion of the Fifth Amendment privilege was unsupported in light of the pardon and the testimony he offered in his opening statement. The chair directed Anthony Fauci to answer. He refused again. That is what we are voting on today. Not his opinions, not his policies, not anything he said from a podium 6 years ago. We are voting on whether a witness who has received the benefit of a sweeping federal pardon can be ordered by this committee to answer questions and then defy that order without consequence. More than 1 million Americans died from COVID. Many of them died alone. Workers were forced to choose between a mandate and a job they needed. Businesses closed and never reopened.
All right, everybody. So that's the story. We got it right there. Good stuff from Rand Paul. And you've got obviously varying opinions on Rand. I've got a few questions I'd like answered from Rand, but I haven't spoken to Rand for quite a while. But I want to give you this, of course. In addition to the Fauci frolics, we're going to talk about the CDC and how the beat goes on. But first, let me give you this. Of course, the Senate Homeland Committee, that's what it was. They voted to hold him in contempt. And you've got there, Fauci has been held in contempt of Congress after an 8-5 vote on the Homeland Security Committee. He pleaded the Fifth over 100 times last week, refusing to answer any questions about the COVID pandemic, and perhaps not enough time has passed for people to cool off from it, and they shouldn't cool off from it. People's lives were destroyed, people died, people took the jab thinking that they had to take the jab to keep their jobs. They were ruined. I know a girl down the street, she lost the hearing in her ear, in one ear, because of the jab. And I know a person now who has to take medicine every day to stop a tumor from basically invading his skull because of the jab. Well, Del Bigtree and the team at ICANN, and by the way, you could see Del Bigtree on the floor recording some of that stuff. I think he was there. It doesn't matter if Fauci was right about everything or that he had the best intentions. And of course, he wasn't right and he didn't have the best intentions. He's still infringed on people's civil and individual rights. And of course, here they get the opportunity to talk to their legal counsel about this. And they do a great job.
The takeaway should be, frankly, it doesn't matter how right Dr. Fauci was. Even if he was right about everything, he had the best intentions, and he was the purest of heart. The problem is that he still infringed on people's civil and individual rights. That's the problem. It doesn't matter if he's a villain or he's a heroine. He's wrong because of what he did in that regard. And to me, that's the most important takeaway. That should be the focus. It's the fact that he crossed that red line. He crossed it on gain of function and critically crossed it on taking away people's individual and civil rights. If you're out there and you love Fauci and you think he's amazing, great. But you should still recognize that giving any man one person that much power to take away our rights, it's dangerous, because maybe the next dude who comes along you don't agree with.
This goes way beyond viruses and pandemics. This goes into, certainly in America, our constitutional rights are not rights endowed to us by the government, but protections of the rights that are endowed to us by God.
Right. And that applies to immigrants as well. To whomever was in David Knight's chat earlier today, and of course, did not pick up the challenge to say, where is the wonderful, magical constitutional power? Even if it were in the Constitution, it would confer no authority over anybody. It's a piece of paper that people wrote. But on the operational system of the United States government, the same lesson that applies to all the lockdowns by all those state governors and all those mayors, all those different politicians, and the national politicians who wanted to shut down trade, shut down the borders, force truckers to take the jabs. In Canada, you got them shutting down people's bank accounts just because they were trying to support the trucking rally. All these types of mindsets, they are mindsets that support the idea that the state is there to make better decisions than the individuals that supposedly compose the state. Now, if that's not tautological, I don't know what is. And that is the problem. It's a moral presumption, which makes it immoral. It is an attack on other individuals' rights, and the same thing goes for immigration. If anybody wants to try to find that power magically in the Constitution, they won't. And then even if it were amended to put it in there, they still have no authority conferred unto them by a piece of paper that says, now I can force somebody to pay for a police force that's going to block people from working on construction sites, that's going to allow us to go into people's houses, to kidnap people taking their kids to school, to shoot people, and then claim that they were driving their SUVs at us. The same mindset that applied to the COVID lockdowns when Donald Trump started it on Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2020, with his unconstitutional announcement of a medical emergency. Do you see that anywhere in the U.S. Constitution? I don't. Just like I don't see the word immigration. If people are willing to recognize that Donald Trump had no political authority, so-called political authority, which is a non-starter, there's no such thing as political authority, because the polis has no authority legitimately over anybody. It's imposed on people. It's an immoral construct. The term political authority is an oxymoron. It's a non-starter. It's completely illogical. It's philosophically unsound. No one can ever claim that there's political authority for anything, because policies don't have authority. They claim power. That's the difference between an anarchist who thinks about these things and somebody who goes along for the ride for most of their life. Because it is a difference. Ask the next question. So for the person who was in David's chat earlier today, who was claiming that we have constitutional rights, implying that they're imbued unto us by the Constitution and that they're only for Americans, have fun, like I tried to explain to Jeff Cooner, have fun trying to apply that mindset. If you go to another country and claim you've got natural rights in that other country, and they say, well, you're not a citizen here, so it doesn't matter. And you say, but I'm a human being. I have natural rights. No, sorry. We didn't write it down on a piece of paper. How stupid can you get? And you people, you know that if you're in the chat, these guys aren't stupid, but they won't stray away from their doctrinaire concepts to actually look at a different option to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm using the wrong terminology. That's a non-starter. I can't say constitutionally given rights. They're only for Americans. I mean, it's embarrassing. People are just so crazy when they do that stuff. So ICANN did a great job. And yes, the Senate Homeland Security Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, led by Ron Johnson, received the phone copy from HHS under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This comes amid scrutiny of Fauci's time leading the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Republicans see it as a potential breakthrough to review communications and decisions. What happened? That's right. They got a forensic copy this afternoon of Fauci's COVID-era phone. That's what happened over the past 4 hours. That is breaking. We'll find out more about this, but Pepe Deluxe writes this. A key investigative panel in the Senate has obtained a copy of Anthony Fauci's pandemic-era cell phone. The cell phone was transferred from the Department of Health and Human Services to the Senate Homeland Security Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. And I bet you anything, when Rand Paul asked Fauci to appear, he knew that they were about ready to get that. That's substantial. That's a big deal. Now, I want to go back a little bit to give you the bad news. And again, who knows what's going to come of this, right? But here's the bad news. Centralized command over you and breaking the Constitution. The Senate just approved Trump's hardcore Zionist pro-jab mandate CDC nominee. Yep, you got it. The Senate confirms the queen of mandating vaccines, Dr. Erica Schwartz, as your new CDC director in a 51-44 vote. Why should there be a CDC? Again, according to John Locke, the supposed rationale for government, even though even that is fallacious, was that government was formed to stop us from harming each other, from taking each other's property and coercing each other. So person-on-person aggression is supposed to be prevented or punished by government. Now, the very fact that the only way that government can exist is engaging in that very aggression, that seems to be lost on them. But if we just put it in that bubble, in that Venn diagram there, then diseases are not man-created unless it's a government involved in it, like the United States through Chapel Hill. If it's a naturally occurring phenomenon like most diseases, then why is government involved? Of course not. It shouldn't be involved. It's just like natural disasters. At what point is a fire big enough to say, well, government can now definitely take my neighbor's money to pay for that, even though my neighbor lives 2,000 miles away and might have other priorities? What kind of disease is bad enough to say, well, in the collective has decided, and now you're going to be you're going to be enslaved to solve the problem we think is the utmost importance of priorities? Where does that end? Again, you can't get these answers through collectivism. It doesn't work, right? So the Feds just approved also a big new mRNA flu shot. Yeah, mRNA flu shots just approved. That's right. 2% mRNA versus 2.8% regular flu shot contracted the flu. How do you even know? Side effects significantly higher than mRNA shot. Why should the FDA be involved with any of this? And by the way, why should 5 companies, and I found this out during the Clinton administration, 5 companies have traditionally been given the license to develop flu vaccines with the little eggs, and then they never get it right, and you get the flu jab, and you end up getting sick anyway. Sickest I've ever been regarding that, other than whatever that COVID stuff was when I got a flu jab. Literally lying on the bathroom floor just a few hours later. I was so sick. But they've approved it. How about this? How about real tortious claims? How about private companies, not corporations? The people who want to get involved in something, offer services, offer a product. If they screw up, they're liable. They're not protected by corporate status. They're not protected by a vaccine liability, 1986 liability court or anything. That would be cool. But you can't have that. So instead, you get the Food and Drug Administration, which, of course, incentivizes the biggest players to make sure that they can game the Food and Drug Administration so that their stuff gets approved and other people's stuff doesn't. That's the way it always goes. That's one of the basics in first-year economics is public choice school economics. And you can cover it in about 2 days. And it applies to every regulatory agency in the history of man. Unbelievable. So that's the latest on Fauci. Let me get your thoughts, everybody, because you let me know. Do you think anything's going to come of it? Do you care if anything comes of it? Let's get your thoughts up on the screen, everybody. See what's going on with everybody in the house.